Dr. Carolyn Dean with us, and she's a leading expert in integrative health with over 35 books and publications to her name, including her book, The Complete Guide to Mental Health. Dr. Dean's expertise goes beyond traditional medicine, focusing on nutrition, stress management, and holistic healing. She's also the founder of RnA ReSet, a company dedicated to creating nutrient-based products for optimal wellness. I am so excited to have you here today, Carolyn, and I can't wait to dive into the subject matter of your book and magnesium and anything else that you want to talk about too.
Thank you so much.
Are you looking for answers, searching for natural ways to support your body, or frustrated with mainstream solutions? So are we. Welcome to the Renewed Hope Wellness Podcast, where we're on a search for answers. We're going off the beaten path and diving into natural solutions to health and wellness issues. Our goal, empower you to be your own health advocate. So let's get started.
You know what struck me when I started realizing I wanted to put together a book about mental health? I thought, how are brain cells different from body cells? Mm-hmm. Why do we think the brain is so difficult to understand, and we can't crack the code on our brain, and all the history of mental problems we kind of shuffle away to the psychiatrists and the psychologists. How can that be if a cell is a cell is a cell? And then I looked at brain neurons, I looked at heart cells, and found out how many mitochondria are in each of these different cell types. Mitochondria make the energy of the body, make the energy of the cell. They're what makes us work and feel alive. Energy in ATP packages, adenosine triphosphate. And what I learned about magnesium is that you can't have an ATP without an Mg magnesium. Each molecule of ATP requires magnesium kind of to activate it, and also to work in the Krebs cycle and the glycolysis cycle that breaks down glucose. Mitochondria, eminently important, and they contain a lot of magnesium. So how many mitochondria are in each brain neuron? How many mitochondria are in the heart cells? I used to think the heart had the most magnesium. In each heart cell, there are 5,000 mitochondria. In each neuron in the brain, 2 million mitochondria. 2 million. Which means
perspective.
Yeah. I mean, let's take out the calculator. It's crazy. So what that means to me is that the brain's using a ton of energy, and if it doesn't have magnesium to make that ATP work, then it's just going to be punked out. The person is going to be fatigued and kind of dopey and foggy, and all the symptoms, the apathy that we start to hear about when someone's mental health is declining. Could it be that a certain percentage of mental health problems are related to magnesium deficiency? So that's where I stand. And I've been talking about magnesium for decades when I found out that I was severely magnesium deficient, but with heart palpitations. And then I found out I couldn't take the ordinary magnesiums without getting the laxative effect. And then after my first magnesium book was published, I spent 10 years trying to find a manufacturer that would make non-laxative magnesium, because I needed so much magnesium, and even over 50 milligrams would give me the laxative effect. And then looking at the literature, writing the second book on magnesium, in this one, I have 68 different medical conditions that could truly be magnesium deficiency. So what I was realizing is people have magnesium deficiency, it's misdiagnosed, they're treated with drugs because they're not told to take magnesium or enough magnesium or the right magnesium that won't cause a laxative effect. So my whole modus operandi now is to try to educate people about magnesium, but also about the type of magnesium they need to take, which I eventually had to make myself because I couldn't get a mineral company to invest in looking for non-laxative magnesium. So if I'm saying there are 2 million mitochondria in our 86 trillion neurons, you need a lot of magnesium to keep your brain going. And I'll tell you now, usually I wait until the middle of an interview, but I'm 76 years old.
Oh,
And I
wow.
and I feel better now than I did in my 30s when before I knew I had magnesium deficiency.
Well, you
So
look amazing
we've
too, by the
got
way.
an epidemic of mental health problems, of dementia, Alzheimer's, all the brain things. And again, we've complexified them so much, we sort of shunt them off to the specialists and don't talk about nutrients, diet, exercise, the things that will truly help a person maintain their health. But anyway, I've said enough.
No, it's wonderful. You look amazing, by the way. I would have never guessed your age at anywhere near that. So I hope magnesium can reverse some of this for me. That would be wonderful. Um, Actually, I think you kind of tapped in on something that the complexity of all the specialists, like really dividing us up as people into we have a specialist for all the different things or issues, but yet we're one person and all that's going on in our body, even though it may be multiple symptoms, it's presenting from a lot of times a simple problem that is we don't have enough of something in the body. And I think sometimes the simplest solutions escape us because we think, oh, it must be a drug that I need or something that's more complicated. And really, our bodies are complex, but they're very simple at the same time in what they require. And so I think sometimes in practice, it's a little bit difficult to look at magnesium as such a miraculous compound when people are suffering with pain or depression or anxiety. And I hear myself saying, you know, magnesium deficiency is linked to all of those things. And I think it's oversimplified sometimes, and they think, oh, well, it couldn't be that easy. Or simply that they do take magnesium. And we often, you know, have that discussion because I think it's getting to therapeutic dosing. And I was so thankful to find your product in the reading of your book, The Magnesium Miracle, because I struggle, you know, in practice. I work with a lot of people who have inflammatory bowel disease of different types. And so magnesium deficiency definitely being linked, but to be able to get in a therapeutic dose without causing further problems. And so it really causes a lot of like a conundrum. How do we fix this, you know, this? And I honestly think the ionized magnesium, I've already seen it make a difference in clients. So that's really my motivation was I think you have something that took many years to develop because you understood the mechanism, and it's amazing. People feeling better that didn't have any results for a long time, and now a week later, I had a client in today, and she said, you know, I've been on this magnesium for about a week, and she said today I felt so different. And it was just like being able, energy wise, she actually looked so much better. And I honestly haven't seen that result as dramatic with like capsule dosing, even though I have used that and still do. So thank you for making that. But could you speak a little bit about why the ionized magnesium is able to do a therapeutic dosing for just the audience to understand the difference in that? Because maybe they are taking lots of magnesium and not having any benefits or results from it.
Right. There's several layers to that, Happy. Most people are taking a magnesium compound, a magnesium citrate, magnesium oxide, magnesium glycinate. It's bound up. It doesn't occur in nature on its own. But what my chemist has done is separate the magnesium from the chloride. It's a magnesium chloride compound that he starts with, separates them and stabilizes the magnesium ion for years, forever in a liquid. So it's a liquid to start with, which makes it easy if someone just wants to start with a few drops or a quarter teaspoon. And because it's a picometer size of an ion, it's going to jump into the cells very easily because the mineral ion channels are that size, picometer size. So if you push a compound, a magnesium compound against the cell, it's not going to go in. What it has to do in the liquid of the blood is disassociate into the magnesium part and then the other part. And because magnesium is so hyperreactive, it just bounces right back and joins up again. It'll fall apart and jump in. And it's only when it falls apart for that instant that it has the opportunity to go into a cell. So what the chemist has done is make the magnesium available 100% for 100% of the time. And we've done university studies, one out of Purdue University, that shows that when you shine a laser through our liquid, it doesn't bounce off anything material because the substance is at a picometer size below the size of I guess the size of the laser. So you've got this substance that goes into the cells that wants to be there in a body that on average is 80% magnesium deficient.
Mhm.
And 80% of the population is probably magnesium deficient. But the 80% is interesting because in 2018, a Dr. Workinger, she wrote a paper and came up with the conclusion that 80% of known metabolic functions in the body require magnesium. So when people ask me, when people ask you, well, yeah, why magnesium? Isn't my problem so bad I need a drug? Magnesium is just, mineral. And you say, well, if 80% of your body needs magnesium and you don't have it, then you are suffering from magnesium deficiency. And let's just take it and see how you feel. I think that's one of the big things with our product is that people can take it and feel better within a day or a week or a couple of weeks. They start to feel symptoms of twitching, muscle spasms, tension, headaches, migraines, even insomnia, heart palpitations, leg cramps, restless legs. There's dozens of symptoms. Think of it this way, Happy. There are 640 muscles in the body, and the muscles are under the influence of a calcium magnesium balance. The calcium is allowed to go into the muscle cell because magnesium opens the door. The calcium goes in, causes an action potential, and then the magnesium somehow pulls the calcium out and shuts the door. If there's not enough magnesium, calcium will just build up in the cell and cause tension and just cause the cell to be in sort of a trigger happy irritable state until it just sort of irritates itself to death, they say. Same with the nerves. There's 45 miles of nerves in the body, and nerve cells will take in some calcium, fire an action potential. Calcium comes out, and then magnesium relaxes the whole situation. So for all your nerves and all your muscles, if there are any symptoms in those categories, you look at magnesium first. And then you look at, I mean, even blood sugar. The magnesium helps the enzymes that make insulin do its job properly. If you get insulin resistance, it could be a magnesium deficiency. In the medical text, it says one of the signs of prediabetes and diabetes is low magnesium. And doctors don't look at that because when I went to med school, and even now in med school, they don't talk about nutrients. They go right to the drugs. When you look at well, 80% of known metabolic functions. So you look at enzymes that detoxify the body, they require magnesium. One of the big things in mental health can be that we have heavy metal toxicity or chemical toxins, and there are mineral receptor sites on cells, waiting for the minerals to come in or go out or do their enzyme cofactoring. And if you don't have the right amount of minerals, then those sites will be taken up by mercury or aluminum or toxic metals or substances. So I say if you've got enough magnesium and your other minerals, then the heavy metals don't have a place to land. And that's pretty important. But I mean, I don't know where I could find a study to show people that, except, they've done animal studies and they show some of these things. So you have to sort of translate that into what's happening in humans.
Right. Wow. It makes you think too, with insulin resistance or so many of the things that you mentioned. I'm having issues because I've been talking all day at work. So sorry about that. But, I think for years we've really looked at the focus of hormones, like kind of almost that it's taken a place where it's like, oh, that's a hormone problem. And I very much agree with that. It's a big part of what I do. But what I've come to realize is that hormones do not run the body. Enzymes do, minerals do. And so I've learned that you can have the best hormone prescription and be magnesium deficient or any several other minerals, and those minerals are not signaling for the hormones to behave properly. And I think we've kind of entered into that in naturopathic care where we can almost match it one supplement for everything or a hormone replacement, where we kind of have to step outside of that and think you're one whole person and your body requires minerals to make all of those actions happen. And I think we've overlooked the elephant in the room, that maybe our hormone imbalances are there because we have mineral deficiencies. And if we correct those, we might not need the replacement therapy as much, or lower dosing that would make it more effective. What do you think about that?
Yes, there's two ways I want to look at that. One is about the thyroid because that's the most common, almost epidemic hormone
Right.
deficiency disease, hypothyroidism. Well, come to find out, after I made my magnesium formula, I worked on a multiple mineral formula. And let me just say, Happy, I'm not mentioning the names of my products because the FDA doesn't want me to say that the name of my product and say that it can help people. So we're under the gun here. And this, I could say I so much appreciate you doing your podcast because we are getting information out there that the FDA doesn't want us to learn about. They don't want us to say that nutrients can help treat disease. They want us to say only drugs can. So with the thyroid, they wait, and allopathic medicine waits until the thyroid is so punked out that you need thyroid hormone replacement. And usually, well, it is synthetic from your allopathic doctor. We may find a naturopathic doctor that gives Armour thyroid or desiccated thyroid, but still it's replacement. So what I found out when I made my multiple mineral is 9 of the 12 minerals in my formula are necessary to make thyroid hormone. We think of iodine because T3 is T with 3 iodine molecules. T4 is with 4 iodine molecules. Oh, yeah, you need lots of iodine. But when you look at the metabolic pathways of how the hormones are made, you'll find, oh, it needs selenium there and copper there and boron there, manganese there, even molybdenum there. 9 mineral, magnesium, of course. So if we don't have those minerals, we don't have thyroid hormones. 6 weeks after I was trying my own new formula, my hands went warm and I was even more hyperactive than usual. And I just got off my 60 milligrams of Armour thyroid because I have a family history of thyroid and freezing hands. So thyroid is so important for brain function, for metabolism. When the thyroid is hypo, you feel sluggish, you feel depressed. So it fits into the mental health guideline that I talk about. The other aspect of hormones and neurotransmitters, which some of them act like hormones, when allopathic medicine decided that, well, the brain has a biochemistry that we can drug. Let's do that. So they find out that serotonin is the feel-good neurotransmitter, and let's just figure out how to make the brain and the body have more serotonin. So it created the SSRIs, the Prozac type drugs. And what they do is they stop serotonin from being broken down. It's supposed to go through a cycle. You have a hit of serotonin. And let me just sidebar into that. For me, my serotonin is smiling at someone on my beach walk every morning or giving someone a hug. That's how I get my hit of serotonin. I don't need a drug. But with the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they inhibit the reuptake of serotonin so that it builds and builds and builds and is supposed to make you happy. But often it gives you a lot of side effects. You can become kind of addicted to it. You can get a serotonin syndrome where you're kind of manic. And what I really don't like about the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, is most of them are made with fluoride. Fluoride molecules are in these drugs to make them more easy to cross the fatty membrane of our cells. So this fluoride is a poison, and the big pharma will say, well, we've experimented with these pills and we put them in a petri dish and they don't break down, so the fluoride stays there. And that's kind of crapola because in the body we break down these drugs. The microbiome in the intestines breaks down drugs. The liver will break down drugs. So it releases fluoride into the body. What does fluoride do? It binds up with magnesium. It makes a brittle substance called cellate, and the cellate deposits in tendons and joints, muscles and ligaments. And when it deposits in tendons, there's a black box warning in a fluoride drug that says it can cause tendon rupture. So nobody has put this together. I get, because I come from the magnesium end of things, and then I I've always studied what fluoride is doing. I see this happening. The drug with the black box warning is ciprofloxacin, a well-known antibiotic, and we see athletes who will, get a mild cold and then be prescribed Cipro, and not necessarily on the first dose or even the first week of it. Maybe in future times, there's this escalation of fluoride in the body, and then they get the tendon rupture. So we've got these very unsafe drugs that we're using to manipulate our serotonin. Well, what helps make serotonin? What helps balance it out? Magnesium. What about dopamine? Oh, magnesium is necessary there. What about oxytocin? Oh, yes, there too. So we've got these neurotransmitters that are made with the help of minerals and vitamins. The B vitamins are very important as well because they are methylators. This whole business about MTHFR irregularities in the gene, MTHFR gene, it's a methylation gene, and if you're not methylating, it affects dozens of different functions in the body. And there are four, but mostly people talk about three B vitamins that are methylators. And if you take synthetic Bs, they're not methylated. And if you don't have the gene that can do the methylation, you're stuck. If you're not eating organic liver to get your Bs or nutritional yeast to get your Bs, it's hard to get your Bs these days. So I work with a methylated food-based bee, low potency. If you see high potency bees, they're usually synthetic and they go pounding on the cells to try to open up the cells for this high dose synthetic bee that will do something, but it won't do the complete process that the natural bees can do.
Or at what cost? That, I think sometimes we can hijack a system in the body with maybe a high dose of vitamin B or vitamin D even, which is a whole nother discussion. But being able to do that, but it's going to cost in minerals because I think understanding there are cofactors that are involved in food when we eat beef liver. There's a whole profile. You have retinol and copper, and those things complement one another. But we think we're so intelligent that we isolate things and we make them in high doses, even in the supplement world, and of course the pharmaceutical world kind of hijacking that system. But that when things are in whole food, they do a full cascade. We're able to actually absorb them without bankrupting the other minerals, which I think happens a lot. And it's interesting that you brought up MTHFR. That's something that my husband and I both have a copy of that gene. And, there's a lot of trend towards really focusing on like the genetic SNPs. And although I do believe they cause methylation issues, folate is a problem, B12 and B6, like those are real, but folate is magnesium dependent. So for me, it's like, okay, so yeah, understand that yes, we do need that, but it's going further up the chain and saying, yeah, you need magnesium in order to get folate into the receptor. So again, having a full profile, but instead of chasing the SNP, how can we
Mm.
support the body so that we have everything available to make that full neurotransmitter, cascade really.
Right.
Progesterone, magnesium dependent, um, progesterone involved in serotonin production. So I think looking at this as far as depression and anxiety, many of my clients have MTHFR and they struggle with anxiety and depression lifelong. But when you really start looking, okay, we can put methylfolate in, we can do methylcobalamin, but sometimes it's that without that mineral, without magnesium, it's almost as if they're weakened to the point that they do a little bit, but I think you have to have the full spectrum of that. And magnesium being the star of the show, honestly, in so many ways. But what do
Mhm.
you think, Carolyn, about the copper connection to magnesium? So you mentioned magnesium opening a doorway, to let things in, calcium in and out of the cell. But I've been intrigued by copper and how that plays such a key role inside mitochondria for ATP production. So being magnesium dependent and then the copper actually being needed with retinol, so vitamin A, kind of that trilogy of those things. What are your thoughts on that connection? Because I know it's not just magnesium, because we're not that simple, right? So,
Well, what happened in my education was back in the, I guess it would have been the 70s. Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, he was a PhD, and he started to go after copper. He attacked it. He said it was causing a lot of problems. Now, around that time, there was a lot of copper plumbing. The IUD was copper, and people were getting copper toxic. And I think he was looking at mental health problems and high copper. I don't know if he was doing hair analysis or whatever. So a lot of people got concerned about copper, but at the same time, when we were researching copper, it's so important. It's vital for for everything. I mean, some people say it's even more important than magnesium, which I will never believe. But as people went through this copper, they instilled their own copper deficiency diet, and they still had symptoms. So what I look at is the way copper is transported is on ceruloplasm. Ceruloplasm is the transporter for iron. So ceruloplasm is working with iron and copper, and you need both of them in your body. So a lot of iron deficiency can really be because we don't have enough copper to make ceruloplasm to transport the iron. So there's your intricacy right there. And the way to get copper, I have a picometer size stabilized copper that I have in my multiple mineral, and I also have in a zinc copper in the correct ratio, 10 parts zinc to 1 part copper. And in the picometer stabilized form, that's bioavailable. You can get copper in liver. I think you mentioned that. But the concern these days is liver safe. How is anybody and any cow's liver not toxic because of air, food, and water pollution? The what is it? The Gerson Institute. I'm on the board of this cancer institute, and Charlotte Gerson, I guess she was in her 90s when she died. She was the daughter of the gentleman Gerson that created this diet of juicing, coffee enemas, and taking liver supplements. She told me years ago that they didn't really feel comfortable with using liver supplements anymore because they were so toxic.
right.
So
It,
we've gotten to the point where our food does not sustain us anymore.
right. Right. And I think that too, trying to find it, and we have tried to source some of those from it is getting more difficult. And it was interesting to me to find that in a teaspoon of bee pollen, there's 45 milligrams of copper. And it's like, that's a huge amount, but it also has 78 trace minerals. So you have this perfect superfood, which it's just like God to make something like that and say, here's a nice packaged food for you. Go ahead and use that, you know. But I think the anemia.
Let me just interrupt. I'm laughing because I'm sure it was like on a New Year's Day, I got this bee pollen supplement because back then, 20, 30 years ago, I read, oh, this is such great stuff. I took so much that I blew up in a huge allergic reaction.
Yeah, and that's a good disclaimer, Carolyn, because if someone has a histamine intolerance, I'm like, you could try one granule, but yeah, you're definitely not going to do that. So, but ways to get it. I think a pretty high amount of copper in cod liver oil naturally, like twice as much as in a normal fish oil. So you also
Mhm.
have that vitamin A and that retinol package. So it's kind of like delivered in. So I like to combine the cod liver oil with a good beef liver, if there is such a thing. I'm hopeful that the one I have spent a long time researching is still there, but I'm going to look further into it as well. You know, the anemia issue when you brought up copper toxicity, because we are told copper's toxic and we're all anemic. But when you think about iron, when I look at iron panels for our clients, I'm like, actually, and anemia means no anemia, no iron. And that's not what I
Yeah.
see at all. In a full iron panel, it's stuck iron. It's iron that's immobilized because there isn't any magnesium or copper or retinol that is readily available. And so I think, they treated the PubMed studies in the 1920s showed treating severe anemia with cod liver oil. And I
Uh,
think it was just that they had that vitamin A coming in and copper, and it was amazing because there was movement of that iron. Because although it's very important, I think our food supply, we've been having shaved metal added to our food since 1941. And then they doubled it in 1951 and fortified our foods. And I think we're drowning in iron. And our body, even if we bring the minerals in, it's really difficult to move that much iron because we don't really need but 4,000 milligrams for a woman and 5,000 for a man. So we've got all of this, accumulation. And I think that it does add to the fact that magnesium becomes deficient, especially if you take iron supplements, because you're trying to put in a big load of iron because you're anemic. And then that required a tremendous amount of magnesium because the body doesn't stop the process just because we isolated something. So, um, just trying to look at it differently of there are these signaling, but very different to have iron in the blood and iron in the tissue, which I think is very linked to the pain and the depression and the anxiety is that accumulation. But what do you think about that?
yes, well, iron has a uptake, a reuptake pattern that's locked in. That means you don't lose iron. You're going to keep
Reset.
recycling your iron.
Right.
A- And and like you say, with the way it's iron is over fortified in foods, et cetera, we can build up too much iron. And one of the theories about women being healthier than men before menopause is we lose a certain amount of iron every month with our menses. And then when we stop doing that, and we're also detoxifying through our menses. And when our menstrual cycle stops, women supposedly start getting as unhealthy as men. So it does take care of itself, but like you say, you have to have copper and the vitamin A. But what I worry about with the liver oils, cod liver oils, etc., is the plankton, the small fish, the whatever these fish are eating, and then we harvest their livers. Their livers are toxic too. And what happens in the fish liver industry is the liver has to be processed by even chemicals and gases and different different preparations that take out the heavy metals and the toxicity. You cannot test a body of water anywhere in the world now and not find heavy metals and chemicals and drugs.
Yeah.
So we've contaminated everything. And so what do we do there? With water filtration, even distillation, maybe. I don't believe in distillation. I do water filter, but I add sea salt to my water
Yeah.
and a quarter teaspoon in each liter of water I drink. And I drink half my body weight in ounces.
Mhm.
So 110 pounds, I'm drinking 55 ounces of water a day. In each liter, I put a quarter teaspoon of salt. And then the other thing about food and diet and trying to be clean, getting away from ultra processed foods. I have a farm here in Maui as well because I knew food is so important. So I made sure that I stay close to the soil, the organic farming, all that entails. But I cannot survive on just the farm food without getting my palpitations back. Food does not sustain us anymore. It's just sustain me anyway. I must have a high need for magnesium. What I think is happening is the environment is very toxic. We're under a lot of stress. If we're watching the news or on social media, we're getting so many hits of our adrenaline and our dopamine and serotonin and all that up and down, up and down. We're overusing our vitamin and mineral cofactors, which then leave a depletion when the body is trying to do a biochemical process. We've wasted our nutrients, so we need a lot of nutrients. So, all of that has to go into the mix, but I hopefully I'm not complexifying it too much because I pull it back, and with my 55 years of experience in the medical naturopathic field, I I know what people need. I tell these young podcasters when they interview me, I've been biohacking from day one, and I know what people need. Food-based, organic, picometer mineral, just the basics. There's a handful of nutrients you need before you go larking off into, Ayurvedic medicine or these smart drugs. When people have a magnesium deficiency symptom and they say, well, I took some magnesium, I got the laxative effect, so I figured I had enough magnesium, because you know how they used to say that to us. Well, when you get the laxative effect, it means you're saturated. No.
I've said that, Carolyn. I've said that in the past.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was trained to, to think about it. And actually, of course, in the last few, I've changed that completely because it never made sense to me why some clients couldn't even handle 125 milligrams of magnesium, but I could clearly see they were deficient. So I think it's relearning or unlearning possibly a lot of the functional medicine, whatever type, or naturopathic, holistic. And it's like this, we find what we're looking for, but we have to kind of change what we're looking for sometimes. But
Right. Yes, and you've said it already, we've been made to think that if you have a symptom, oh, here's a vitamin for it, just like if you have a symptom, here's a drug for it. And we've gotten way off track because even research, they'll try to study one nutrient at a time. You mentioned vitamin D in passing, and you need magnesium to activate vitamin D.
and
So
and all of these people that have been told to take copious amounts of vitamin D, that end up having heart palpitations. They have anxiety, and I worked through that and thought, well, it's a hormone. It's a steroidal hormone. So the magnesium was being pulled out, which created a lot of that problem. So
yeah, I proved that in my own blood testing when when I did my first vitamin D test, and it was only a couple of years ago. I was 19 and I would like to be 60. I was 19, living in Maui, not going in the sun too much, obviously. So I started to take 10,000 units of my vitamin D3 and a K2. And after 3 months, my vitamin D was up to 59. But my magnesium, which had been RBC magnesium, which had been way up there, it came down about 10 points because my magnesium was working on this extra vitamin D. So
yeah,
we know when these silly doctors give you 50,000 units of vitamin D, it's just going to drag away all your magnesium in order to metabolize the vitamin D, and it's going to take it away from your heart and your head.
yeah. Which makes you question the whole premise of why is it just isolate? Why are we doing this to just isolate and think? I mean, these high doses, and I had a lot of clients saying, look, if I take one drop of vitamin D, I get heart palpitations, and their magnesium levels were so low in the cell again, it was already an empty bank account, so it didn't take much to put that over. But I think during the pandemic, there was such a focus on just a fear driven, let's do something. And I mean, I think vitamin D was helpful, but it came at a cost. And I think the long COVID has really elevated those viral loads from childhood and on during that process because it takes a tremendous amount of vitamin A. When you take that much vitamin D, you deplete that main carrier vitamin of magnesium and copper, you know, so
Right. Yeah. I put a vitamin A in with my omega-3, vitamin A and vitamin E in with omega-3. So that's the fat soluble vitamins with the fatty acid was such a great combination.
yeah.
Yes, you need all these basics that in single studies they'll prove themselves. But if we could only put aside funding to take a set of formulas like mine and a group of people and then follow them. And I I keep threatening to do a survey of my customer base because I know we didn't have the COVID infections that a lot of people did. We
Mm,
don't see the C word disease. We have people who get off medications, all the things that the FDA doesn't want us to do. And the thing about COVID, the COVID years, I mean, it proved a lot to us about how we do need to take care of our health, and the people who really suffered the most were the obese and overweight, people on medications, people who were low and deficient in all the nutrients. But also, we have to remember that it was a genetically engineered virus. It was spiked up with spike protein, and the jab itself was spiked up with spike protein. So people who had COVID, and I did have it, or people who took the jab, we're all suffering from the after effects of the spike protein on our whatever tissue is the most vulnerable in a person. I was, a little bit concerned because I had the history of magnesium deficient heart palpitations. So I just up the amounts of my nutrients that I've been taking every day for, 12 years now.
okay. Wow. And I think also the fluoride you mentioned with the compounds, I think a lot of people that had were on a lot of medications, like you said, people that already had diagnosed illness didn't do well. But if you realize that they require a tremendous amount of magnesium just to replenish the body from these fluoride, not to mention
Mhm.
fluoride's going to, replace iodine in the receptor too. So you have a lot going on, probably more than we're aware of when the fluoride's introduced. But I'd like for you to kind of talk a little bit to the audience that may be on antidepressants or things that stop working, and just kind of an idea, Carolyn, of what kind of impact does that have on our cellular magnesium when we're on medications of any kind, because they're all acidic, they're all going to require a magnesium neutralizing factor. I think just to help people understand, what does this cost for me to regulate my depression with a medication? If it's truly a magnesium deficiency, is that just furthering a problem so that there's this hamster wheel effect? Or is it not that? Could you put in enough magnesium for a patient that has plenty of medications and they've been on them for years? And of course, we're not talking about anybody getting off of those or going against their doctors. This is just a conversation of how is that impacting? And is that what would lead to someone needing more and more medication, increase in dose, another medication added? Is it really the magnesium role that's kind of being affected ultimately in that? Or do you think it's a lot more?
Well, when you look at anxiety and depression and dementia, and you see with anxiety, it can even start with low blood sugar. A person's not eating right, or they're drinking a lot of coffee, or whatever, burning the midnight oil, only getting 4 hours of sleep, they're just overworked, that then they're pushing their adrenal glands and they get hyper, they'll get startled easily because their adrenaline system is hypersensitive. Adrenaline requires magnesium and B vitamins and sodium. And when you use up your adrenaline with this hyperactivity, then you're using up those nutrients. If you start giving a person sea salted water and they're drinking water, um, if you give them the methylated food-based B vitamins, if you give them the picometer magnesium, and you fill up their storage boxes with these nutrients, then actually the adrenals calm down. You don't get these surges of adrenaline. You change the diet so that a person is eating regularly. They get off the sugar, they get off the ultra processed foods. Then you get the sleep comes back, so they feel rested and they don't have to drink coffee to wake up because the magnesium is helping them make their energy molecules. So all these systems come back in place, and you don't stop the medications. We never tell people to stop what they're on. What any sensible doctor will do when a person says, well, now I'm sleeping, maybe I don't need this medication, the doctor will help them wean off it. And the same with any of their medications. So that's the approach I take is there's this underlying stress or grief or trauma or something that gets the mind all upset. Unresolved conflict is what we call it, and sometimes that can place itself into the body as a physical symptom. And if people can understand their conflicts, talk through their conflicts, not necessarily even going to a psychologist or psychiatrist, because sometimes you're just repeating the same grief, you're reinforcing it almost, but you're trying to resolve why why a person is upset, because a person can be upset in their adult life about something happened when they were a child. And if they're told, well, what would the adult tell the child now about that episode? And the person will say, well, I tell them that was so simple. It was just a misunderstanding. And okay, we'll incorporate that knowledge into the child. Sometimes something as simple as that, conflict resolution. And people will stop the what we call the gramophone thoughts of a conflict. Gramophone, we have to explain that's an old because nobody knows what a gramophone is anymore. But I'm kind of simplifying it, but that I think about 80% of people can be helped just with the simple diet, lifestyle, and basic nutrients.
And is that in your book, Carolyn, the book that you have right now, which is fairly new? You and I talked about that just a moment ago. That one, and then also the one for the complete guide to mental health.
Exactly. Yes.
So is that where listeners would find kind of your more complex layout of this is how you incorporate these things, or is in explaining the need and the research to back it up?
Yes, that would all be in the PDF or Kindle book. We don't have a paper copy of the Guide to Mental Health. I stopped, killing trees. But also we have a very robust customer service department where people can call up and tell their story and then not get medical advice, but get advice on what nutrients they could slowly start to take to be able to build up their nutritional reserve.
Wow. Well, I'm excited to read that book because I again had learned about you and your product on the first book. So, and I actually want to get the second one as well, but just for listeners to know that there's a more detailed explanation and kind of a background about why this would help so much. I know we're going to need to close up shortly, Carolyn, because you and I both have other things going on, right? Um, do you have any information on what you would kind of say to everyone in closing? Is there something that you're like, for anything that you would like to advise? I know there are ways to test the magnesium. We do that in our office here. The red blood cell magnesium test, of course, being better than the serum panel for just a standard complete metabolic panel having magnesium. So could you explain how they would be able to, either with a practitioner or on their own, kind of keep up with those levels and what the difference in the numbers would be?
Right. The RBC test is better than the serum because it has a wider range, and what you want to do is stay at the top of the range. I think it's like 4.2 to 6.8. You want to be up in the sixes. With the serum, it's only like one to two. It's so narrow range because in the bloodstream there's only 1% of the total body magnesium, so you're not getting a good representation. But so the it's hard to talk about this because it's not available, but in our research that my company we do university research, we do an ionized magnesium test. So it tests the actual ions of the minerals that are available. And that's what the cells use, the ionized magnesium in this case. So that's what you want to test. And it's available in emergency departments sometimes or in ICUs. And we hope that it'll become more universally available because then we'll find out how many people are suffering magnesium deficiency. So you can get the blood test, be at the highest level, but maybe it's just as good to look at all the magnesium deficiency symptoms and see where you fall. Actually, on my website, I have a magnesium deficiency quiz, and you can answer what how your symptoms range. It may be graded like 1 to 10,
Okay.
and that can give you an idea. Oh, I think I'm deficient. Maybe I should try some magnesium. And if you have, everybody has magnesium. Everybody has, oh, I have magnesium that's in your cupboard. You haven't been taking it. If it's a powder, put it in water and drink it through the day. Even if it's a capsule, open it up, put it in your water, drink it through the day. Because if you take a sort of large dose of magnesium all at once, you could get the laxative effect. And then, of course, when you run out of that, you can look at my liquid magnesium and try that because it is basically non-laxative. And the other thing that I usually end with is trying to bring appreciation into your life. We have so much to to be thankful for. We are all blessed to be living, most of us, with friends and family and acquaintances that we can smile at and get a serotonin hit when they smile back. So practice, what I tell people, practice gathering smiles so that you can feel uplifted and feel that it's worthwhile to be alive and to take care of your own health. I mean, it's kind of vapid and blasé, but it means so much when you can get people to smile and be happy.
Yeah. That was perfect. That was perfect. I was actually, my daughter was doing some research for me in our office this week, and she came out and said, "Mom, did you know that a grateful thought actually changes brain cell activity?" And so just seeing that, I mean, we know because we feel the results of it, but it was just so interesting to look at that research and actually monitor a cell and see that it was impacted by gratefulness, and I think that's, if we can change our mind, then most of the time we can change our health. That's how it needs to happen that way. But do you have, and I know I said in closing, Carolyn, but I don't know when I hope I'll get to interview you again. Maybe we'll dive in a little deeper on I wanted to talk about glyphosate and how that depletes magnesium and about 1,000 other things that are on my list. So we'll have another conversation if your schedule allows it, hopefully. Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
a client that or a patient that you've treated that or any success with people where they had a pretty remarkable healing from their depression and anxiety with just minerals being brought in?
I have, yes. I think about one gentleman, he had depersonalization. He would kind of slip out of his body when things would get too stressful. And then he started to go through anxiety. By the time he got to us, he said he was on about 10 medications and he had depression, anxiety, fatigue, and he got into heart palpitations. And that to me is like a key magnesium deficiency symptom to look at. And he began taking the minerals. He couldn't work anymore because he was so debilitated. But through it took maybe 2 years, but by the end of 2 years, he was married and having a baby with his wife, and he was working, and it was incredible. And he kept in touch with us and gave us his story, which I will never forget. I think I probably put it in one of my books, but it does happen. And I think with some people, it's like they've tried everything, and then they'll look at something like, a picometer magnesium, and it will just hit them that, oh my gosh, that could be it. And then they do their due diligence about checking it out, taking it slowly, maybe telling their doctors, staying on their medication while they're taking the minerals, and slow, sometimes quickly, but eventually so many people get better. It's just so rewarding to us at customer service hearing all these amazing stories. We've got a 90-year-old insurance salesman, Newman, who just loves what we do. And he's the talk of the town. Everybody he won't quit. His insurance company they don't want to get rid of him because he's their best salesman. He's their best example. It's so incredible. He wants us to do an over 90 club of customers.
Well, maybe that size will grow, but it might be a little small initially. I actually had a client today who's 97. She was so precious and looked at her magnesium level from a year ago, and it was flagged very, very dangerously low on the serum. And so as I sat there and explained magnesium, and she said, "Do you mean that little bottle could actually make me care that I have things to do and get up and do?" And I said, I'm very hopeful that it will. And she just sat really listening because it made so much sense to her that something powers our cells. And when it's missing, we're on empty. And she said, "I feel like I'm on empty." And I used the gas tank illustration. And she said, "That's me. I'm on empty." But I thought, even for someone in their 90s, the cell
Oh,
can still make energy if it has what it needs. So
exactly. Very good.
well, our listeners can become members on your site at www.drcarolyndean.com, and you'll be able to access from there the full book and exclusive content. And then you can also subscribe, and everyone can share this information around. And we're going to provide all of the links at the bottom of the podcast. So if anyone has any questions, you'll be able to reach out to her. Dr. Dean also has an Instagram and a YouTube, so plenty of opportunity to connect there. And hopefully we will have part 2 of this at some point in the future, Carolyn, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Happy. Great speaking with you and sharing all these insights that people really want to know about to keep their cells healthy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast inspired you or encouraged you in some way, please leave us a review or share this episode with a friend. If you need help connecting the dots of your own health journey, I would love to help you with that. You can reach me via the link below to set up a one-on-one consultation. You can also connect with us by joining our free Facebook community, which is linked below, or at healthywithhappyspurling.com. Until next time.